JC, welcome to the Virtual CMO Podcast. So glad you could join us today.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. Hopefully we can add a lot of value today to some people.
Absolutely. So let's start out. How did you find yourself down in Nicaragua?
I brought, long story short, it's a woman, I guess. Can we just end there, or do we need to keep?
Well, it's a good place to be with COVID, taking hold here in the U.S. Is it bad down there?
Dude, it is. It's really bad, but it's interesting. In the U.S., it's when you're strong enough to fight, you fight, and you have options, right? But when you're in a third world country, there are no options. There is no quarantine. Everyone works in manufacturing or farms. There is no subsidy checks like we got in the US, or stimulus checks. Like, that doesn't happen. There is no, healthcare is free. So it's over. So it's just different, So here it's not like, what can we do to fight it? It's, dude, there's nothing we can do. Let's just keep working and let's keep going at it. So you have the very wealthy that are like at the beach and like trying to play it safe, but really 95% of the country is still rolling.
So there was no intent to become a digital nomad.
There is, dude. And, especially whenever I tell people I spend most of my time in Latin America, people think beach life, right? And right now, like I'm that standard, but we have a beautiful office in the city. We work from 7 to 4, Monday through Friday, we're in that corporate America world. It's just in Latin America, but I've spent more time with my family than I have in a long time. I just found out last week we're expecting our second child. And so
that's great.
It's a beautiful time for me right now. So I can't complain. It's just different, it's just different.
Well, let's rewind the clock a little bit, give everybody some background into you. How did you get into digital marketing?
Yeah. So very blessed. From a young age, I was into entrepreneurship. I'll tell you a background story. So when I was 13, 14, every day after school, I'd go to my grandparents' house where I would eat a huge bowl of ice cream, like huge. I mean, like peanuts, caramel. They had all these like crazy toppings. And then number 2, after that, my granddad and I would always get out the paper and we'd look at the houses for sale, and we would dig into what it could be profitable, right? So my granddad was big into real estate. And we would take a house, we'd look at the value, how much could we rent it for, all this numbers. And sometimes we'd be like, let's go look at that house. And then every once in a while, he'd actually buy the house. And I would be there for that whole process. When I was 14 years old, and my family's very much my family's one of those families that the money never gets passed down. They always give it away, at the end of the generation. Okay. It's just simply like we're going to teach you how to fish type of family. And so at 14, we went and looked at a house, and it was an awesome house. It was beautiful. Cash flow was going to be there. My granddad told me, nope, honest to God truth, you should buy this house. 14 years old. And I'm like, okay, sure. Of course, I didn't know, anything. And I was like, sure, yeah, I think I should. How do I do this? Well, I knew how lending worked at this age, blah, blah, blah. And what I now know is that we were good friends with the vice president of the local bank. My granddad and me had the same name. And so I went through this whole process of buying this house and renting it out and all this thing. Of course, it was actually my granddad's name. It's just that we were the same, right? So at 18, I got to turn it over. But this kickstarted my entrepreneurial, life. Then from the time I was 18 to 24, worked in finance, which was a great thing to learn how to manage money and budget and invest. And then started a tech ed company that I got rid of to IBM, and then got into the digital marketing space quickly after that. And it's been a blast, man. It's just learning and growing and failing miserably. And, it's just a beautiful journey, Well, long story short.
That brings up a great point, because scaling a business is tough, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small business owners are going through that growth period, and they make mistakes, and they correct from the mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes are good because you learn along the way. But it's also great if you can short circuit some of that and not make the same mistakes that others have made. What have been some of the unique challenges that you've experienced, and maybe some advice that you could pass along to other entrepreneurs or business owners to say, don't do this?
Yeah. It's So one thing I think it's important to understand what scalability is, because it's different to every person, right? Whether you're, oh, I want to become a billionaire, or I want to sell for 10 million, or I want to have that nomadic life. For me, it's creating jobs. So I've been very blessed, with business, and now I'm like, kind of I want to create jobs that create stability for people. And specifically, I'm in Central America, where there's not a lot of stability. The economy goes crazy with the president or a political situation. And so I want to create stability for people. And so for me, scalability is safety, it's security, it's providing jobs that pay well to my single moms and single dads and all this good stuff. Those things are really important to me. So I think for me, when it comes to scaling, is, Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game versus the finite game. It's about staying in business forever. Like, how do we create a business model that just is perpetual? I am probably one of my proudest moments in business so far is that we went through COVID in a marketing agency that serves SMB, small businesses. We did not fire one person, and we did not have one salary cut. And the reason, as much as I hate him or love him, is I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. And so we have no debt in the company. We have a cash savings. And so we have no long-term contracts, which is a big deal. We have no long-term big contracts with any of our providers, whether that be some type of service or a debt that we're contracted to. What did that allow us to do? When COVID hit, where a lot of businesses, they had debt, they couldn't, the margins weren't as big. They couldn't get small. We got small. I called up Salesforce and was like, look, I need a discount. Well, because they didn't have a long-term contract, they gave us 75% off. I called up Brian Halligan, owner of HubSpot. He gave us 80%. Actually, he gave us 3 months for free, right? So we were able to do all this stuff, able to get us really small, really quick, right? And so balancing this idea of, when we think scalability, we think just, I want to invest, I want to ramp, I want to grow like crazy, but offsetting that with security. Worst case scenario, what happens if I lose my biggest client? What happens if I lose 50% of our margins or whatever, right? We play that. One of the most important numbers in our company that we look at as a leadership group is our get small budget, which I recommend everyone, personal and business, to have this. But we look at, if we lost every client we had tomorrow, tsunami came, crisis hit, how long could we pay our team before we ran out of money, right? With the savings we have, right? So right now we're at 5 months. We're a 2-year-old company. We're at 5 months if something crisis. So those type of things give you security. Now when COVID hits, hopefully you slow down. You don't panic. Hey, let's take a week to make this decision and make the right one. Oh, let's actually negotiate with our partners and have a little bit more leverage. Oh, let's, so on and so forth. Right. I think the biggest thing was that security. Right.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned HubSpot and Brian Halligan, because that's really one of the things that I took away from our initial conversation before we jumped on the call, is that there is a culture that you're trying to build at the company. And my perception is that for many companies, culture is one of these checklist items that they say, well, we'll get to that later. Once we're profitable, once we're bigger, then we'll start to do that. Because I think a lot of them look at culture as free coffee and a ping pong table and some beanbag chairs. They don't look at culture as a foundational element of what their company is and what it stands for. And it sounds like, as you've built this company, that has been very foundational to the company. So you went into this wanting to build a company with this very specific culture.
I'm a big, and I agree. Most people are the free coffee, the free lunch, the free, those type of things. And we try at least to go much deeper than that. Okay, so we don't have free food yet. Hopefully it's going to be soon. We don't have the free gym yet. Hopefully that's going to be soon. But what we have done is we've tried to focus on things that, really matter to people, right? And so we really try to get to the core, not superficial. What do you, what matters to you, but like really what changes your life. So we've invested a lot of our culture. One has to do with education. So every single child at Hite is on full scholarship for education. So keep in mind, most of our individuals are in our offices in Latin America. In Nicaragua specifically, the average The average education level is the 5th grade in Nicaragua today, 2020, which is freaking insane.
Mhm.
And education is expensive. So an English education, you're looking at, if someone makes, $1,000 or $2,000 a month, which is a really good salary, you're looking at 40% of that would go per child. So at Hite, we put all of our kids on scholarship, and then we also do experiences. So every year, last year, we took our entire company and their families and their kids to Costa Rica, all-inclusive resort. The year before that, we flew them to the Caribbean. And so when we're building a culture, I think it's like, and maybe this sounds like arrogant or ignorant, but we got to think of it almost as parents, right? Like there's things that we do for our kids that are like, okay, you can have the ice cream, which is what I think like the Coke is. But then there's also things like, we're going to give you violin lessons, right? Which is going to give you more, like, it's really what you need and what's going to make you into something, right? And so I think as leaders, we got to not only look at the fun, but we got to look at like what really matters to our people and how do we help them scale, if that makes sense, right?
Well, it does make sense, because I think that sometimes people look at workplace culture as a retention strategy. What do we need to do to retain talent? And, there's logic in that. But what you're talking about is workplace culture, making it a good place to work that's good for people and doing the right thing. Because work-life balance is important, right? You don't just show up at work and leave your personal life at home. It's important that work contribute to your overall sense of well-being and happiness.
I was taught something I think very basic, and I don't know what, I feel like more CEOs or owners should be thinking of it this way, but this company is going to literally be the thing that pays for my daughter's education. This company pays for every vacation I have, everything that I'm getting in my, like right now I'm at our beach resort at Huacalito. Look it up. It's one of the luxury places in Central America. Morgan Freeman was here. The owner of GoPro has a lot down here. Like the reason I'm doing that is because of this team. And whenever I turn this around, it's not, oh, they have a job because of me. It's no, like everything I have is because of this team. And when you start to turn it around, you start to hopefully, ideally, be more humble and be more, how do I help them more? So when you start to listen to, ideally, when we're listening to our team and we're trying to do, COVID hit in February, and dude, I mean, the board, my salary was the only, I say we didn't cut anyone's salary. My salary was cut 100%. I didn't make anything in February, March, or April. Not because I was a great guy, but because, dude, if I don't save my team, if I don't give them the ability to fight through this, what am I going to have in the end, right? It's selfish, I guess, maybe in a way, right? And so I think we have to start looking at culture in a more, like, I don't know, how we treat our wives. Like, I don't treat my wife good so she doesn't leave me. I treat her good because, like, I love her, like, everything, right? And then we start, I think, getting more to the root. It starts becoming more real. It starts becoming more of a relationship. And then once you have that relationship, once you build those levels of service up to like an unbelievable level of service, if you've read any of Ron Kaufman's books, you start to build rapport, with people that can last,
Well, you talk about relationships, and you mentioned before reaching out to Brian and others when you needed some relief on the contracts that you were in and whatnot. But here you're working in Latin America. I'm sure your customers are spread out, but you have a number of customers here in the States, and you probably got team members up here as well, right?
Right.
So talk about relationships, building relationships in this virtual world, and really the importance of relationships in growing your business.
Yeah. I think so. Right now, 95% of our business is in the US. And if it's not in the US, it's in Europe. And we actually don't deal with very many Latin American businesses unless they're very, very large. And so, and oh, by the way, through COVID, I gave the example the other day. I feel like the most beautiful girl wearing a face mask right now. Like the biggest part of working at Hite and being a part of us is our culture. Like that's who we are. We go bowling and we have all this fun. And right now through COVID, it's like I'm wearing a face mask on this beautiful face and no one can experience it. And, we hired, I think through COVID, like since we went remote, we've hired, I think right at 10 full-time people. None of them has experienced our culture, and that's been a thing, man. My wife works remote with Salesforce and she doesn't have the culture. They don't, she's an employee. She's a number. She's a cheaper labor than in-house in California. Right. And for me, we've tried to do a lot of things. Number one is phone calls. So like today, one of my girls messaged me and was like, "Hey JC, I have a couple of questions." Well, instead of just messaging back, I did a video call. "Hey, how are you? How's the family?" All this stuff. Like, I think we have to ask ourselves as leaders, not how do we show we care, but like, do we actually care? If you actually care, you'll start doing some of these things. And then a lot of practical stuff. So we started doing virtual yogas. So we got a yoga teacher that does yoga via Zoom every Wednesday with our team, and I think every Monday or something like that. And then we have a HIT trainer that does like cardio, whatever, and is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So we try to do as many of those type of things as possible. It's difficult, man. It's really complex. It's really complex.
Yeah, I've been a remote worker for 20 plus years, and there have been good periods and bad periods, but I think COVID is really changing things, because when I look back at my career, the times that were good were the times that there was regular in-face, person-to-person interaction with my team. The worst times were the times where they said, no corporate travel, you're stuck at home. And this was really before a lot of Zoom calls and things like that. So it was just on the telephone. It was conference calls. It was terrible. So now we're in this world where remote work is a reality. It's going to be part of everyone's work routines, but we still have to figure out a way to build culture. We have to build that connection, those relationships, right?
Yeah, and we're looking at that right now. I mean, our goal, Lord willing, we'll be able to go back to the office in October, November. That's our goal. And we are very blessed that we don't have to take the risk. So our entire company is built on Salesforce. There's nothing that hinders our operation by working remote fundamentally, right? So as a leadership, we've said, hey, why risk it? So our goal is to go back in November. But like this, there's probably 25% of our people that are like, dude, I'm so much more productive at home. I love being able to, if I need 10 minutes to go tuck in my child or, whatever, like it's so, and then we got probably 50% going, I'm about to die. Like if you're either going to have to get me psychiatric help or you're going to have to like open up the office, right? So everybody's different. And I think we are coming into a world where potentially there's going to be a lot more options. Like companies are going to be potentially more open to, okay, what do you want? What type of work experience do you want? Here's the deliverables. And then unless you're not executing those deliverables, there's going to be more flexibility. It's definitely cheaper. Like, dude, I mean, we spent a lot of money on that stinking office. I mean, a lot of money, And so it's, so there's definitely some benefits of not, and I mean, even myself, right? Like, I'm someone that if I have an office and I'm making other people go to that office, I need to also go to the office, right? We need to lead by example. And so I've never been able to have that nomadic, like, oh, I'm going to go take a month vacation and let my VAs do the work, or, because everybody would know if I was gone. And then, when the cats are gone, the mice will play, so to speak. And so right now I've got this beautiful opportunity where even I'm, kind of nobody knows if I take a 6-hour lunch or I go to the beach with my daughter at 9 a.m. So it's interesting, Well,
I love the way you frame it in terms of options, because there isn't a one size fits all. Personalities are different. Some people really require that social interaction. Some people, work just fine at home. And when you focus on productivity, you focus on your deliverables, how you get it done during the course of the day matters a whole lot less than just getting it done. And that sort of leads me to my next question, which, you talked about scaling, growing your business. So as you look to add people to your business, do you hire for cultural fit or do you hire for skills and experience?
Man, that's a great question. And it's something I would love to say. I think like every leader would like to say, oh, I hire for culture. I hire for fit. That's a good thing to say. But like, right now we're looking for a Facebook ads manager and I've got someone who has 4 years of experience. You don't think, I mean, that's beautiful. That's amazing. I want to, bring them in. Here's what I will say. If they don't fit our culture, we don't hire them. Right. Like period. Right. And so for us, and we have a very weird cult, like, our culture is weird. I'm weird in a lot of ways. Number one, I'm very family driven. My daughter's in the office all the time. Like if you're not someone I want my daughter being around, you won't last in our company. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I may get sued someday for this, but it's just, that's how I'm going to work. Right.
Yep.
So in the same context, like other people have their kids around. I've got a single dad that every morning his daycare is across the street from our office. So every morning, the first hour, his daughter's in our office with us. He's like 7, And so we have to always have that like type of culture. So if you don't fit into that culture, you won't work with us, right? If you're cursing all the time, or not doing stuff appropriate, like, it just won't work. I'm also a very religious person. So if you have a problem with that, like, I might not be a good fit, because I'm going to say stuff like, heaven forbid, or, God help us, or I may like, hey guys, we got to pray about this for a second, like, so there's a lot of things. Now I'm in Latin America where 99.9% of people will at least say they're Catholic, even, so on and so forth. So it's a little different context, but, I think those values are important. I think even beyond the values is what we're committed to. So my commitment is to create 1,000 jobs that empower people. All right. That's like what I'm doing. If you can't get behind that, it's going to be difficult, because we make decisions on that, right? Like, as an organization, we may not give someone a raise because it means that we need more stability for the bigger goal. Or we may not, like, there's a lot of things we do because we're trying to get to the 1,000 that doesn't make sense if your goals are mega profitability, or your goal is to sell, or your goal is to do these other things, right? So when we're aligned in our end goal, it allows us, I think, to at least understand the processes and the roadmaps to get there. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I love that. I think more businesses would benefit if they had a longer term goal like that. They really knew what they were shooting towards, besides just having a profitable company. Yeah. And, you've built a business now that does digital marketing, but you specialize in working with other agencies. Have you built out a specific skill set that you can white label to other agencies that is a better option for them than building those skills internally, building up their own staffs?
Yeah, so right, we do white label fulfillment for agencies, and the biggest. So when you're building an agency, let's think of a micro or small agency. So anything between 3 employees and 10 or 15 employees. Like, so you always have this balance between cost and quality. So if I'm going out and I want to find a really good SEO person, because I want to give a good. Nobody wants to give a crappy service. So I want to give a great service. I want to find a good SEO person. They're expensive. They're not cheap. Like, I mean, good SEO person in the US is like at minimum 80,000 a year, right? And now you have that overhead and so on and so forth at minimum. Why? Because they'll go out and get 3 jobs and they'll make that themselves being a freelancer, right? And so by working with us, we're able to lower that cost dramatically, but yet at the same time have great efficiencies and quality of work, because we have a training department, we have a QA department, all this stuff. So you have the high quality, you have the low cost, and you have no overhead, right? So right now we're thriving in COVID. I mean, we took a huge dip with our partners, and now we're way before. We're ahead of where we were pre-COVID, just simply because like people are realizing they need us. So 2 reasons, I think, number one, people hire us because they just don't have enough need for a full-time, right? Or they don't know how to do it. So it's an SEO company that wants to add PPC, or a web company that wants to add SEO. So they just need to add the team to be able to do it. Or number 2, it's a larger company that's looking to cut cost, so they use us. And I'm super excited about this. I haven't talked about this on any other podcast. We are
exclusive. I like it.
Super pumped in Q4. We're launching our franchise model. So we're actually going to be one of the top, or hopefully one of the fastest growing franchises focused solely on digital marketing, right? So we give the website, we give everything, we give the fulfillment, we give the prospecting, we give the brand, we give the name. I mean, everything you need to really scale your agency is about to launch through our franchise model, which is really, really exciting to us.
That does sound really exciting. And I'm curious because, as I advise clients, we talk about usually a mix of in-house resources and then farming work out to either agencies or freelancers, but people who are truly experts in what they do, because it's very hard and expensive, as you said, to build all that expertise in-house, whether you're at a company or at an agency. When you look at digital marketing, and especially with new channels coming online and the complexity of it and changing algorithms, what are some common mistakes that you see businesses making just in terms of their overall strategy?
Oh, that's a good question. So we're talking about businesses making mistakes when it comes to marketing. So I think number one, people are too worried about like perfection versus just getting out there. I think nowadays the market almost looks for imperfection. Like they expect it. Like they're okay with it. They want to talk with someone that's real, someone that's personable. And so now more than ever, I mean, what you're doing right now with the podcast and people that are doing, I think every digital marketer should either have a podcast or a YouTube channel, one or the other, because it's such a great way to connect with your audience. So I think a lot of people a lot of businesses don't go because they're afraid. Oh man, but I don't know exactly what to say. I don't know exactly what to do. Oh, my pitch isn't. That's okay. Like people don't need that, right? We'll always get. And oh, by the way, even if you did have the perfect thing to say, it's through experience that we start to get better, not through, So like, just get started. Just do something, And then I think it's just a matter of finding the right team, right? So a small business, working with not an agency that's perfect, but an agency that will figure it out for you. So marketing is variable. Marketing is not always black and white. It's not, I signed up for PPC and here it goes. It's about figuring out what works in your market for your business, for your message, for your price point. And so you got to have a marketer, not that's promising you the world right off the bat, but one that's going to go, okay, here's strategy A, here's plan B, here's plan C. We're going to keep working and fighting and shifting and molding until we find the perfect sauce to be able to give you that ROI, So these agencies that can do more nowadays, I think, than just have a one-step solution are going to be more and more and more valuable, right?
It's so interesting what you said, because I think that there have been these factors that have come together. It's not only COVID, but it's technology. It's things like we have FaceTime on our cameras or on our phones, so we can communicate that way. People have just become more comfortable getting in front of a camera, and that is building that level of trust. We see it on the evening news where people are reporting from their homes and their living rooms, and the cat is walking by. And there is this level of acceptance now, I think, that it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's okay with people. I think one of the big things that's happened with Zoom meetings is that people were forced to finally turn on the camera and say, okay, yeah, this is my living room. This is my office. Yeah, and it's a little messy in the background or whatever. And that's okay. And for the first time, I think people are really getting comfortable putting themselves out there. And I think it's a great opportunity for brands to start to build that level of trust with their customer base. And I know you have a YouTube channel where you talk to the audience about, your company and your growth, and you're very real and honest with what you're trying to do there. How have you found that whole experience, just being real with your audience?
I YouTube, it's funny. I hate YouTube. I hate getting on there. I think it's weird. In fact, this morning I was talking to a YouTube coach that we're considering hiring, and I was being vulnerable with it. I was like, dude, who am I? Like, who am I to be out there telling people what to do? I'm 31 years old. I've had some success, but I feel like I get it wrong more than I get it right sometimes. And shoot, what if I tell someone the wrong thing? And he said, that's all good. Like that was that's perfect. Because the people that just start talking, like those are the guys you got to watch out for. But people want realness, and that's where we, and if you go to my YouTube channel, I've slacked off of the last couple months because I've been so focused on podcast and launching the franchise. And so but man, the value is so huge for a digital marketing company. I will say that, it is good for sales, but it's also good for retention. When my clients go there and see that, oh man, like he's actually producing content. He knows what he's talking about. Like, oh, JC, man, he's got a top 200 podcast. Like he must know what he's doing. Oh, he's, all these things, a writer for entrepreneur, like all those things add up to the credibility, which helps you in the long run, give you time with your clients,
So you mentioned podcast. I know you've got one that you host, the Digital Agency Hacker podcast. Obviously the title implies that it's mostly focused on the digital agency crowd. Is it broader than that? Does it also cover general digital marketing topics that a broader audience would relate to as well?
Yeah. So I would say specifically to digital marketers. If you're a digital marketer, it's a great podcast to go listen to, but I will say I'm very broad on it, right? So, I had a podcast the other day when I talked about faith. I had a podcast the other day when I talked about mindset. And so for me, it's the holistic livelihood of a digital marketing agency owner or executive officer, things like that. And then we get tactical. I got a podcast releasing, I think tomorrow, on top 10 stupid things people do on Facebook, right? So like Facebook advertising. And so, there's some real technical stuff as well, but we try to gear it specifically towards digital marketing agency owners or leadership, right?
I think that's great because you've got to have a niche, right? You've got to have a focus area that you can find your audience. So that's awesome. And I'll make sure that we have links to all of that in the show notes. So this has been a really fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed it. Tell people how they can find you online.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much, I guess, everywhere. Some of the channels I run, some of them our marketing department runs, but LinkedIn, JC Hite, Instagram, JC Hite, Twitter. I think I'm on Twitter as well. I will say Instagram is probably the one I try to be most active on, or LinkedIn. So, or you can hit us up at hitedigital.com as well if there's any fulfillment needs or anything like that. I think we're all booked up right now, but if you want to check it out. Yeah, I love to connect. This stuff, I love digital marketing. I love working with entrepreneurs. So any way we can connect and have conversations like this, it's highlights of my day. So it's really enjoyable.
JC, this has been great. A lot of valuable content here, and I love what you're doing with the business, and I wish you all the success. It sounds like you've got some exciting things that are coming in the fall, as well as what you're doing with the podcast. So best of luck to you in all of that.
Yes, you as well. You as well. It was a pleasure.
Great.